The collapse that didn't come out of nowhere. The narrator opens by explaining that what the audience is witnessing didn't begin with a headline or a sudden scandal. Instead, it's the result of years of pressure quietly building behind the scenes. Jada Pinkett Smith's public unraveling, the narrator says, wasn't random or emotional. It was structural. For decades, she and Will Smith occupied a rare level of Hollywood power, moving freely through elite circles where privacy was currency and silence was protection. The narrator emphasizes that when Diddy began facing real federal pressure, something shifted. Old names resurfaced, old stories stopped sounding far-fetched, and suddenly, Jada's long history of controversial moments, cryptic interviews, and strained family dynamics were no longer dismissed as eccentric celebrity behavior. Instead, viewers are encouraged to see them as warning signs that were ignored. The narrator stresses that this isn't about proving guilt, it's about understanding patterns. Why did so many accusations, rumors, and uncomfortable moments cluster around the same people for so long? And why did it take law enforcement scrutiny elsewhere to finally force a wider conversation? Why Jada's name keeps appearing in Diddy conversations. The narrator then shifts focus to proximity, explaining that power isn't always about action, it's often about access. Jada and Will weren't distant acquaintances of Diddy. According to multiple insiders, they were fixtures in the same private environments, exclusive parties, industry retreats, and off-the-record gatherings where behavior rarely reached the public eye. The narrator explains that Gene Eel's recent statements reignited interest because he wasn't speculating from the outside. He was describing a world he claims to have lived in. Viewers are reminded that elite circles operate differently, with informal rules and mutual protection. The narrator points out that Jada's name repeatedly surfaces not because of one allegation, but because she was consistently present. And presence matters. Being there means witnessing things, normalizing things, and sometimes benefiting from silence. The narrator carefully notes that no charges have been filed, but emphasizes that repeated proximity to alleged wrongdoing raises unavoidable questions. Questions Hollywood has historically worked very hard to suppress.
Next, the narrator recounts the now infamous Jennifer Lopez story that changed how people looked back. Next, the narrator recounts the now infamous Jennifer Lopez story, emphasizing why it refuses to fade away. According to Gene Eel, tensions reached a breaking point during a private birthday gathering attended by A-list celebrities. Diddy allegedly believed Will and Jada were making advances toward Jennifer Lopez while she was still dating him. The narrator explains that what startled people wasn't jealousy, it was how normalized the behavior seemed in that environment. Eel claimed Diddy prepared for a physical confrontation, asking him to stay close in case things escalated. The narrator points out that nothing ultimately happened, but that's almost beside the point. The real significance is that this situation didn't shock anyone present. It was treated as plausible, acceptable, almost expected. The narrator stresses that this moment, when revisited today, looks less like celebrity drama and more like evidence of blurred boundaries in elite relationships, boundaries that would never be tolerated in ordinary families. A marriage that quietly ended years before the public knew. The narrator turns to Will and Jada's marriage, explaining that the public narrative never matched reality. Jada's admission that they separated in 2016 stunned audiences because it reframed everything that came after. The narrator explains that for 7 years, the couple presented unity while privately living separate lives. Will later described a philosophy where neither partner was responsible for the other's happiness, a mindset the narrator suggests can easily slide into emotional detachment. Viewers are reminded that both Will and Jada admitted to pursuing other relationships during this time. The narrator highlights how this admission fueled online speculation that their lifestyle extended far beyond what they publicly acknowledged. While supporters framed it as honesty, critics saw something darker.
a system where emotional boundaries dissolved and accountability disappeared. The narrator underscores that this context is essential for understanding every controversy that followed. The entanglement that opened the floodgates. The narrator describes how the August Alsina revelation marked a turning point. When Jada discussed the relationship publicly, she framed it as a private matter that became public by force. But the narrator explains why many viewers didn't accept that framing. August was younger, emotionally vulnerable, and closely connected to the family. The word entanglement, the narrator notes, became a symbol, not of transparency, but of avoidance. Critics argued it minimized harm and disguised power imbalance. The narrator explains that after this moment, people stopped giving the Smiths the benefit of the doubt. What once looked unconventional now looked calculated. And once the public questioned one relationship, they began questioning all of them.
Jaden Smith and the growing concern around boundaries. Attention then shifts to Jaden Smith. The narrator explains that concern didn't come from one interview, but from a pattern. Jada openly discussed introducing Jaden to alternative mental health practices at a young age. Jaden later described experiences involving plant-based therapies and ego dissolution. The narrator carefully explains that while some defend these practices, others question whether a child can meaningfully consent to them. The concern deepened when reports surfaced that Jaden pursued legal independence early. The narrator asks viewers to consider why a child raised in wealth and opportunity would seek distance from his parents. Allegations surfaced online suggesting inappropriate environments and blurred parental boundaries. Again, the narrator emphasizes these are allegations, not facts, but they align with a troubling trajectory that viewers are urged not to ignore. Former insiders and the allegations no one wanted to hear. The narrator introduces former associates like Bilal, explaining why their claims unsettled so many people. According to these accounts, the Smith household allegedly contained explicit material openly displayed, inappropriate behavior normalized, and a lack of regard for minors present. The narrator explains that legal threats followed these statements, but lawsuits did not. Bilal later claimed intimidation escalated overseas, including being followed and injured in a suspicious incident. The narrator stresses that none of this has been proven in court, but the consistency of the stories, combined with the absence of legal resolution, keeps the controversy alive. Silence, the narrator notes, is not the same as innocence in elite systems. The Diddy tapes, Jaguar Wright, and the question of accountability. The final section widens the lens. The narrator explains that Gene Deal's claims about tapes involving Diddy and an A-list celebrity sent shockwaves through the industry. Names circulated online, none confirmed. What mattered wasn't identity, it was implication. Jaguar Wright argued that Diddy wasn't an outlier, but part of a protected network. According to her, Jada moved comfortably within that system. The narrator recalls Jaguar's claim that Will's Oscars incident was triggered not by emotion, but by control. She also warned about young men connected to Will who later showed signs of trauma. The narrator closes by emphasizing the central question of the video, not whether every allegation is true, but whether Hollywood's power structure made harm inevitable and accountability optional.